The sky above the cities of Earth was calm, but every home, every building, every street carried the quiet weight of defeat. Humanity had not been free for a long time. The alien empire that called itself the Valar had broken Earth's armies a generation ago. They had taken control of the skies, stripped away the warships, and forced humanity into silence. People lived, but they lived under watchful eyes. There was food, medicine, and peace, but there was no pride. Humanity endured, but every man and woman carried a buried fire, a fire they were forbidden to show. Then, without warning, it happened. Screens flickered. The ordinary channels of news and entertainment went black. In homes, in markets, in schools, even in the government halls, every device came alive with a single transmission. No sound at first, only static, heavy and unsettling. People stopped what they were doing. A mother froze with a spoon halfway to her child's mouth. A worker on a construction site dropped his tools. Soldiers in alien-guarded bases paused mid-drill. Every human eye turned to the screens. The static cleared. The first image appeared. It was not a movie. It was not news. It was something raw, something terrible. A human colony on a far-off world filled the frame, but it was not whole. The colony burned. Buildings were shattered, smoke rose into the alien sky, and people, men, women, children, were running, terrified. They were chased. And their hunters were Valar soldiers, tall, armored, their weapons glowing with cruel fire. The camera did not turn away. It showed everything. It showed a father throwing himself in front of his daughter, only to be cut down by a beam that left nothing but ash. It showed a mother screaming, holding her baby, begging for mercy, while the alien commander raised a hand in cold dismissal before a shot silenced them forever. Gasps spread through the watching crowds. Some turned away in horror. Others could not blink, their eyes filling with tears. The broadcast did not stop. It showed more. Streets filled with human bodies. Children crying as they were dragged from hiding. The Valar soldiers laughed, their voices cruel, their faces filled with the cold arrogance of conquerors. They were not soldiers keeping order. They were predators enjoying the hunt. The broadcast did not carry a single word of explanation. No warning, no demand, no message. Only the horror, only the truth. On Earth, silence spread. Then whispers, then cries. An old man watching in a park fell to his knees, shaking. A teenager in a crowded cafe clenched his fists until his knuckles bled. Mothers pulled their children close. Fathers stared at the screen with jaws tight, eyes full of rage they had been forced to swallow for too long. The broadcast cut again. New images appeared. This time, the faces of the dead. Faces of humans staring out with eyes that would never see again. Faces frozen in pain. And then, faces still alive, prisoners chained, begging for help. Their voices filled the air, their words broken but desperate. Please, help us. We are human. We are your brothers, your sisters. We are not gone yet. The sound was not loud, but it was enough. It pierced hearts like knives. Across Earth, people broke. Some wept openly. Others shouted, screaming at the sky as if the Valar themselves could hear. And in those screams, something changed. It was no longer only grief. It was fury. The broadcast went on for minutes that felt like hours. Then suddenly it ended. The screen went black again. No words followed. No explanation. No one knew who had sent it. Was it a human rebel? Was it an alien traitor? Or was it something else entirely? But the silence that followed was louder than thunder. People stared at the blank screens, their hearts pounding, their blood boiling. For the first time in decades, humanity felt the weight of its chains. And for the first time in decades, humanity wanted to break them. In a military outpost, a young soldier slammed his fist against the table. They think we are weak, he whispered, his voice trembling. They think we will always kneel. In a crowded street, a woman shouted into the air, her voice trembling with rage. No more, not again, not ever again. The cry spread, first as murmurs, then as chants, then as roars. Humanity had been silent too long. The broadcast had given them something they could not ignore. Far away, hidden from alien eyes, human leaders watched the same footage. Some paled, others trembled, but one thing was clear in every face: they could not allow this to be forgotten. They knew the risk. They knew the Valar would punish any hint of rebellion, but they also knew something else. This was no ordinary message. This was a spark, and sparks once lit could set fire to the darkest night. The broadcast had ended, but it had not truly ended. It lived in every human heart, burning, pushing, whispering. The message was simple, even though no words had been spoken. Remember, rise, fight. And deep in the silence of space, where signals crossed the void and echoes lingered, the Valar Empire did not yet realize what had been born. The universe had just seen humanity's tears, but it would soon see something far more dangerous. It would see humanity's vengeance. The world did not sleep after the broadcast. Cities that had once been quiet under alien rule now trembled with noise. The streets filled with people shouting, crying, demanding answers. Some begged the heavens for justice, others cursed the Valar with voices that carried for miles. The broadcast had planted something deep, and it was spreading like fire through dry grass. Governments tried to calm the storm, but the leaders themselves were shaken. In a hidden chamber under the Earth Council, the most powerful humans gathered. They sat around a long table, but none could hide the fire in their eyes. For decades, they had signed papers of surrender, smiled under alien command, and bent their necks to survive. Now the truth of Valar cruelty blazed across their minds. One of them, an older general with scars on his face, slammed his fist on the table. "No more silence," he said. "If we stay bowed, we are not living. We are only waiting to die." His words shook the room. For the first time in years, no one dared to disagree. In homes across the world, families replayed the broadcast again and again. Children asked their parents why the aliens had done such things. Parents had no answer, only tears and anger. In the factories, workers whispered of rebellion. In schools, teachers spoke of freedom, words they had been too afraid to use before. The air itself seemed to thrum with a dangerous new rhythm, defiance. The Valar patrol ships above Earth noticed the unrest. They sent warnings, strict commands, threats of punishment. But the threats, instead of calming humans, only fueled the storm. When Valar soldiers marched into the streets to silence protests, they were met not with fear but with rocks, with fists, with burning eyes. Humanity had tasted the truth, and fear was no longer enough to chain them. The broadcast had not only shown death, it had shown betrayal. For years, the Valar had said that humans were safe under their protection, that colonies were watched and cared for. The images revealed that it was a lie too heavy to swallow. In the middle of the chaos, whispers began to spread. Who had sent the broadcast? Who had risked everything to show the truth? Some believed it was a human rebel cell hidden in the outer colonies. Others whispered of traitors inside the Valar ranks. A few even believed the galaxy itself wanted humanity to rise. The mystery only added to the fury. In secret hangars buried under mountains, old blueprints were pulled from dusty vaults. These were the designs of ships that had been forbidden after Earth's surrender. Huge warships, once dreams on paper, now stared back like sleeping giants waiting to wake. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers gathered in these hidden places, their voices hushed but their eyes alight with determination. The leaders faced a choice: act or be crushed. One by one they spoke. Some trembled, some shouted, some whispered, but all agreed. Humanity could no longer wait for permission to live free. That night, a secret order was given. Factories would begin new work under the guise of normal labor. Resources would be diverted quietly. Weapons would be built again. And for the first time in decades, human shipyards would burn with fire not for commerce but for war. But not everyone was ready. There were those who feared the Valar's wrath. They argued that resistance would only bring extinction. They warned that humanity was too weak, too scattered, too late. Yet even their voices trembled, because deep inside they too had felt the weight of the broadcast. In the crowded streets of New London, a young man climbed onto a broken wall and raised his voice. He was not a soldier, not a leader, just one man with fire in his chest. "They think we are nothing," he shouted. "They think we will never fight. But did you see it? Did you see them kill our children? Our families? They want us broken, but they made us one." His voice cracked, but his words spread like lightning. The crowd roared. That roar echoed across the world. The Valar ships above Earth watched with unease. Reports were sent back to their empire. Warnings about human unrest were ignored at first, for the Valar believed themselves untouchable. They had crushed many species before, and they believed humanity would break again. They did not understand what had been awakened. The broadcast had not only shown cruelty, it had reminded humanity of who they were. Fighters, survivors, dreamers who reached for the stars not to bow but to rise. The fire in their hearts had been smothered but not extinguished, and now it burned brighter than ever. In the secret chambers, the old general who had spoken first looked out over a map of the stars. His voice was steady, low, and filled with the certainty of a man who had waited too long. They will come for us soon, but when they do, they will not find slaves. They will find humans. And so the outcry of billions became something more than anger. It became unity. Across nations that had once been divided, across borders that had once mattered, humanity stood together under one banner. Not the banner of a government, but the banner of survival. The Valar had not expected this. The galaxy had not expected this. Even humanity itself had not expected this. But the spark had become a flame, and flames, when fed, could become an inferno. The broadcast had shown the galaxy a massacre. But it had given humanity a gift far more dangerous than weapons. It had given them a reason, and a species with a reason to fight is a species impossible to stop. The world moved in shadows now. The Valar still watched from their orbital stations, still patrolled the skies, still believed they held humanity on a tight leash. But beneath the surface of Earth, in mountain bunkers and hidden shipyards, a secret heartbeat had begun. It was the sound of machines being woken after decades of silence. It was the sound of sparks flying in dark tunnels. It was the sound of a species preparing for war. The blueprints had slept for years, old warship designs forbidden by treaty, sealed away in archives guarded by silence. Engineers unrolled them with trembling hands, their fingers brushing the faded ink as if touching relics of a forgotten religion. These were not just ships. They were symbols of what humanity had once been. Daring, ambitious, unafraid of the stars. In the first underground hangar, the skeleton of a vessel rose. At first, it was nothing more than steel ribs arching upward like the bones of some sleeping giant. But piece by piece, it grew. Panels slid into place. Engines the size of towers were lowered into its heart. Weapons, long hidden in secret vaults, were mounted along its flanks. The workers called it the Relentless. The name spread in whispers, and soon it was spoken with reverence. Men and women worked day and night, often without rest. Farmers, miners, mechanics, scientists, anyone with skill offered their hands. Even those who had never touched a tool before came to lift, to carry, to clean, just to be a part of something greater. The broadcast of cruelty still lived in their minds, and each bolt they fastened, each wire they connected, felt like an answer to that pain. The Valar did not see it yet. They thought humanity's anger was only noise, only riots in the streets. They did not realize that beneath their feet, the earth was shifting. The leaders met often now, but their meetings were no longer filled with arguments of fear. They spoke in hushed tones about strategy, about timing, about the moment when humanity would finally rise. One leader whispered, "We must not only build ships, we must build unity." And so they sent quiet envoys across the world. Old rival nations shook hands. Enemies who once fought each other now shared plans and resources. Humanity, divided for so long, was weaving itself into one people. In a hidden lab, scientists worked on something even more dangerous. They had analyzed the broadcast again and again, and hidden inside its signals were patterns, codes, fragments of alien data. From this, they began to uncover Valar weaknesses, flaws in their shields, cracks in their communication systems. It was as if the broadcast itself had not only shown cruelty, but handed humanity the keys to fight back. Still, no one knew who had planted this knowledge, and the question gnawed at them. Was it chance, or was there someone out there pushing humanity toward vengeance? The first test of the Relentless came in silence. Deep under the ocean, its engines roared to life, vibrations rolling through the water like the growl of an awakening beast. The crew stood at their stations, wide-eyed, hearts pounding. Some whispered prayers, others clenched their fists. When the ship rose from the hidden docks and broke through the waves, its black hull gleamed under the pale moonlight. For the first time in generations, Earth had a warship again. The sight spread quickly. Hidden cameras recorded the colossal vessel breaking the surface, and the footage leaked into human networks. People saw it, and their cries filled the air. It was not just metal and weapons. It was hope given form. It was proof that they were no longer helpless. Other shipyards followed. In deserts, forests, under the ice, more giants began to rise. Some were cruisers, some were carriers, some were small and fast. But each one carried the same spirit. The people who built them no longer thought of themselves as workers. They were builders of freedom. The Valar patrols grew suspicious. Reports spoke of missing materials, strange energy readings, hidden movements of people. The Valor commanders scoffed at first. They are only humans, they said. They have no teeth. But still they sent scouts. The first scout ship that came too close vanished. No distress call, no signal, only silence. The truth was hidden, but the humans who destroyed it felt a shiver of triumph. The first blood had not been spilled yet, but the first warning had been given. Inside the Relentless, the captain walked through the halls. He was not the youngest, not the strongest, but his voice carried the weight of every sacrifice made to bring the ship alive. He stopped before his crew, men and women who had volunteered, knowing what might come. His eyes scanned them, and then he spoke in simple words. This ship is not just ours. It belongs to every man, woman, and child who has suffered. It belongs to the dead who cannot fight and to the living who must. The Valor think we are broken. They will learn. They will see us. They will fear us, the crew answered with a single word, shouted so loud it shook the walls. Humanity! And so the fleet began to rise, one ship after another, like stars being born in the darkness. The Valor still did not understand. They still thought of humans as restless children. But far away, in the secret corners of the galaxy, other species were watching. They had seen humanity break before, and now they watched as humanity sharpened its claws. Some whispered warnings. Others whispered prayers. The forging of the fleet had begun. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the balance of power was shifting. The broadcast had lit the fire. Now humanity was building the sword. The Relentless drifted in the dark, silent as a shadow, its black hull blending with the endless void. Around it, smaller ships formed a loose formation. Escorts built in secret, each one rough and raw, but bristling with human firepower. The fleet was small, barely a fraction of what the Valor controlled. But this was not about numbers. This was about the first strike, the first taste of blood. For weeks, the ships had trained in secret, running drills through hidden asteroid fields, firing weapons into the emptiness, testing shields against simulated attacks. The crews were new, untested, but every man and woman carried the broadcast in their hearts. The images of slaughter and cruelty burned in their memories. When their hands shook, they remembered. When fear crept in, they remembered. On Earth, billions waited in silence. The leaders had made a decision that could not be undone. Humanity would not cower any longer. If they struck first, they would expose themselves. The Valor would come in force. But if they did nothing, the Valor would strike again anyway, and humanity would only die slower. The target was chosen carefully, a Valor patrol convoy moving between two outer colonies. It carried supplies, weapons, and slaves, human slaves among them. It was not heavily guarded, for the Valor did not think anyone would dare challenge them here. They were wrong. The order came through the fleet, whispered from ship to ship. Engage! Engines flared, weapons armed, and the darkness came alive with human fire. The first volley of missiles streaked through space, bright trails cutting across the stars. The Valor ships, sleek and silver, turned too late. Explosions ripped through the lead vessel, tearing its hull apart. A second ship caught the blast, spinning helplessly before breaking in two. The humans cheered, but only for a breath. The Valor responded quickly, their weapons cutting across the void like lances of light. A human escort ship was hit, shields flaring, then collapsing. Its hull cracked open, air and fire spilling out. Dozens of brave souls died in silence, but their sacrifice gave the rest a chance to strike again. The Relentless moved forward, its massive cannons charging. The sound of its weapons firing was felt more than heard, a deep vibration that shook every crew member to their core. The blast slammed into a Valor cruiser, ripping its shield apart and carving a burning wound into its body. Pieces of alien metal spun into the void, glowing red. Inside the Valor ships, panic spread. These humans were not fleeing. They were not begging. They were fighting like predators, like warriors who had waited too long to unleash their rage. The Valor had crushed many species before, but none had struck like this. The battle raged. Human fighters darted through the chaos, small and fast, diving into blind spots, firing torpedoes at close range. Some never returned, caught in the blaze of alien weapons. But for every human ship destroyed, a Valor ship fell in return. In the heart of the battle, the slave transports shook as explosions rocked the convoy. Human prisoners pressed against their cages, eyes wide, hardly daring to hope. Then, through the smoke and fire, a voice came over the comms. "This is the human fleet, hold on. We are coming." The slaves cried out, their despair cracking into raw, desperate joy. For years they had believed Earth had forgotten them. Now they knew the truth. Humanity had not abandoned them. Humanity had come back. The Valar commander tried to rally his ships, but the humans fought with a madness that could not be matched. They did not fight for territory or resources or politics. They fought for vengeance, for family, for every tear shed under alien boots. At last, the battle reached its end. The Relentless drove forward, its cannons tearing through the final Valar cruiser. The ship broke apart, its fragments burning like meteors in the void. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of human voices shouting in victory across the comms. When the slave ships were opened, thousands of weary eyes stared at their rescuers. Soldiers pulled the captives out, wrapping them in blankets, offering food and water. Some slaves wept. Others simply stared, unable to believe they were free. One child whispered, "You came for us." A soldier knelt beside him, her eyes wet. "We will always come for you." The victory spread across Earth within hours. The images of destroyed Valar ships, of freed prisoners, of human warships standing proud, raced across every screen. People poured into the streets cheering, shouting, chanting the same word over and over. Humanity. Humanity, humanity. But while Earth celebrated, the Valar Empire burned with fury. Reports of the ambush reached their high council. Shock turned to rage. "The humans dare!" one commander snarled. "They forget their place." Armies were ordered to prepare. A fleet larger than anything Earth could imagine began to gather. On the bridge of the Relentless, the captain stood silent, staring into the stars. The crew cheered around him, but he knew the truth. This victory was only the beginning. The Valar would come, and they would come in numbers beyond counting. Still, he smiled faintly, just for himself. For the first time, humanity had drawn blood. For the first time, the galaxy knew they were not broken. And for the first time, the Valar had reason to fear. The first blood had been spilled in the stars, and it was only the beginning of vengeance. The broadcast played again, not on the alien networks this time, but on human ships in hidden bases in the quiet before battle. The same images. The burning colony, the screaming children, the merciless laughter of Valar soldiers flashed across every screen. Crews watched in silence, their jaws tight, their eyes burning. Some wept quietly. Others clenched their fists until their knuckles turned white. When the broadcast ended, the silence was heavy, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of fury. Every captain made the same choice. Before weapons were armed, before engines roared, before a single order was given, the broadcast would be shown. It became a ritual, a fire lit in the hearts of all who served. Soldiers whispered to each other, "We don't fight for power. We fight for them." And then, when the order came, they charged with a fury that shocked even themselves. On Earth, families gathered in their homes and watched the footage too, not because they had to, but because they needed to remember. Children asked their parents about the colony, about the people who had died. Parents answered not with sorrow, but with fire. They were ours, and we will avenge them. The Valar could not understand this. To them, the broadcast was weakness, a wound that should have broken human spirit. They had not realized that pain, when shared, could become a weapon. Humanity had turned their suffering into a battle cry. In the war rooms, leaders studied the battles. The first strikes had been victories, but they were costly. Human ships were lost, and every soul aboard weighed heavy on the living. Yet the broadcast gave their sacrifice meaning. Each time a ship was destroyed, the footage was replayed, and the crew's names were spoken alongside it. The dead became part of the fire, fueling the living to fight harder. But the mystery of the broadcast still lingered. Scientists studied the original signal, frame by frame, code by code. At first it seemed simple, just raw footage of horror. But deeper inside, patterns emerged. Strange data embedded in the noise, fragments of alien encryption, fleet routes, shield frequencies. It was as if the broadcast carried more than pain. It carried secrets. "Someone gave this to us," whispered one scientist, staring at the glowing data. "Someone wanted us to rise." The question spread quickly. Who had sent the broadcast? Was it a human rebel cell, hidden deep in the colonies? Was it an alien species hoping to turn humanity into a weapon against the Valar? Or was it someone inside the Valar Empire itself? A traitor with motives unknown? The leaders debated, but no answer came. For now, it did not matter. The broadcast had become more than a mystery. It had become the soul of the rebellion. The Relentless carried it like a heartbeat. Before each mission, the crew gathered in the mess hall. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered, and the broadcast played. The captain stood among them, watching the images with the same pain as the first time. When it ended, he spoke the same words, "Never again." And the crew shouted them back until the walls shook. In space, battles grew fiercer. Velar fleets arrived in greater numbers, their commanders furious at the defiance of humans. But each time the humans struck harder than expected. They used the secrets hidden in the broadcast, jamming enemy communications, slipping past patrols, piercing shields at weak points. Victories piled up, small but steady. The Valar began to whisper among themselves that something was wrong, that humanity was not fighting blind. Meanwhile, across Earth, the broadcast was replayed in schools, in factories, in the streets. Children memorized the images, vowing they would never kneel. Workers painted the words "never again" on walls, on weapons, even on their skin. The Valar tried to suppress it, tried to forbid the images, but it was too late. The broadcast had become unstoppable. It lived in every human mind, carried in every voice, burning like a star no one could dim. Yet with every victory came a shadow. The Valar Empire was gathering its full strength now. Scouts returned with warnings of massive fleets assembling, fleets larger than the human race had ever faced. The leaders knew the storm was coming. They knew the celebrations would not last. But when fear whispered, the broadcast played again. When doubt crept in, the broadcast played again. And when soldiers were buried, the broadcast played at their graves, their names spoken with the faces of the slaughtered colony, as if to bind the living and the dead in the same cause. One night, on the bridge of the Relentless, the captain stood alone, watching the broadcast for the 1,000th time. His eyes lingered not on the cruelty of the Valar, but on the faces of the humans in those final moments. The father shielding his daughter, the mother begging for mercy. He whispered to himself, not as a soldier, but as a man, "You did not die in vain. Every star we burn, every enemy we strike, every ship we build, it is for you." He closed his eyes, and in the silence he could almost hear their voices answering. The galaxy was beginning to notice. Other species watched the humans rise, shocked at their ferocity. Some feared them, some admired them, and some began to wonder if the Valar's time as masters was ending. But none could deny it. The humans had become something new, something dangerous, and all of it began with one broadcast. It had started as a wound, but it had become a weapon sharper than any blade, louder than any cannon. It was not metal, not fire, not numbers. It was memory, and memory was something that could never be conquered. The sky above Earth filled with fire. For weeks the signs had been clear, Valar ships massing on the edge of human space. Reports of fleets too large to count. Now the storm had arrived. Thousands of alien warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their engines blazing like suns. The largest of them dwarfed mountains, armored leviathans built to crush entire civilizations. The Valar had decided, no more patience, no more warnings. Humanity would be erased. On Earth, every screen lit up with alerts. Sirens wailed across cities. Families rushed into shelters carved into the ground, while soldiers sprinted to defense stations. In orbit, the human fleet prepared itself. The Relentless stood at the center, its black hull reflecting the light of the enemy armada. Around it, cruisers, carriers, and swarms of smaller ships formed a shield. It was not enough, not against thousands. But numbers were not the only weapon humanity carried. On the bridge of the Relentless, the captain's voice was calm but firm. "We do not fight for survival alone. We fight for vengeance. We fight for the children stolen, the families broken, the chains we wore. Today, the galaxy learns what humanity truly is." His words echoed through the comms, reaching every ship. Crews whispered the phrase back to themselves like a prayer. Today the galaxy learns. The Valar opened fire first. Beams of blinding energy cut through the void, striking human shields with thunderous impact. Some collapsed instantly, ships splitting apart, burning fragments scattering into the darkness. The loss was immediate and brutal, but the humans did not scatter. They roared forward, missiles launched in waves, hundreds, then thousands, their engines streaking bright trails through space. The Valar scoffed. Missiles were primitive weapons. But when the first wave struck, their laughter turned to alarm. The missiles carried codes hidden in the broadcast, signals that slipped past Valar defenses and tricked their shields into lowering. One by one, massive ships shuddered under explosions. their armor tearing open, their cores bursting like suns. The humans cheered, but the battle was far from won. Velar fighters swarmed like locusts, sleek and fast, diving into human formations. Explosions lit the black sky like fireworks. A human destroyer spun out of control, its engines failing, before it slammed into a Velar cruiser in a suicide strike that destroyed them both. On Earth's surface, giant cannons hidden in mountains fired upward, their blasts carving through enemy ships that strayed too close. Orbital platforms, once silent monuments, awakened and rained fire into the void. The whole planet had become a fortress. Still, the Velar pressed harder. Their dreadnoughts advanced, massive weapons charging with energy that could burn continents. Humanity had nothing so large, nothing so overwhelming. But they had something else. They had rage, they had cunning, and they had unity. In the chaos, human fighters executed impossible maneuvers, darting between enemy beams, weaving through debris fields, striking at weak points. Pilots screamed defiance as they fought, their voices carried on comms even as their ships exploded. Each sacrifice tore at the heart of humanity, but each also cut deeper into the Velar. The Relentless led the charge. Its cannons thundered, tearing apart a Velar battleship, then another. The captain stood tall on the bridge, his crew battered but unyielding. "We are the fire they cannot smother," he declared. "We are the storm they cannot endure." Hours passed like minutes. The battle stretched across orbit, burning brighter than any sunrise. The Velar still held the advantage, their numbers crushing, their power overwhelming. Yet the humans refused to break. Each time a ship was destroyed, another surged forward to fill the gap. Each time the Velar thought victory was close, a new wave of human firepower cut them back. And then something happened the Velar had never seen before. The humans replayed the broadcast across open channels. Every Velar ship, every commander, every soldier heard the screams of the slaughtered colony. They saw the faces of the dying humans, the children, the mothers, the fathers. The galaxy itself heard the truth of Velar cruelty. The humans used the broadcast not as a shield, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. "This is who they are," the message declared. "And this is why we fight." For the first time, some Velar hesitated. Some faltered. A few even broke formation. And in that hesitation, humanity struck with everything they had left. The Relentless rammed forward, leading a spear of ships straight into the heart of the Velar fleet. Cannons roared. Missiles exploded. Debris scattered like stars shattering. Human warships tore through the enemy lines, unstoppable, unyielding, unwilling to bow. The Velar flagship finally unleashed its weapon, a beam so powerful it carved through 3 human ships in one sweep. But before it could fire again, a swarm of human fighters dove into its hull, sacrificing themselves in kamikaze strikes that cracked the giant open. Then the Relentless fired its final volley and the flagship burned. Silence followed. Not because the battle was over, it was not, but because humanity had proven something impossible. Against overwhelming odds, against thousands of ships, against power meant to crush them utterly, they had endured. The Velar pulled back, their commanders shaken, their fleets retreating to regroup. Humanity had not won, not truly. Losses were staggering. Entire fleets were gone. Cities on Earth still burned from orbital strikes. But they had not been erased. They had not been broken. In the quiet aftermath, the survivors looked to the stars, their bodies weary, their hearts heavy. Yet in their eyes burned the same fire. Humanity had faced the great clash and lived. On the bridge of the Relentless, the captain whispered the words that would echo across the galaxy. "We are still here." The battle had ended, but the smoke of war still hung heavy over Earth. Cities smoldered. Seas carried the wreckage of fallen ships, and the orbit above was a graveyard of metal and flame. Humanity had survived the great clash, but only just. The Velar had withdrawn, not defeated, but shaken. For the first time in living memory, an empire that prided itself on crushing resistance had been forced to retreat. Humanity had won time, nothing more. In the silence that followed, scientists returned to their work. They replayed the broadcast again, not for fire in the heart, but for answers in the code. For months, they had known there was more hidden in that cursed signal, a pattern buried inside the horror. But now, with resources gathered from the wreckage of Velar ships, they had tools strong enough to tear deeper. The discovery came in fragments. At first it looked like random noise. spikes of energy hidden between frames of screaming colonists. But when the pieces were aligned, when the fragments were placed together like shards of glass, something remarkable appeared. Schematics, not human schematics, Velar energy grids, shield matrices, fleet layouts, even encryption keys. All of it had been buried inside the broadcast, hidden beneath the images of death. Whoever had sent it had not only shown humanity its chains, they had slipped the key into humanity's hand. The scientists stared at the screens, their mouths dry. One of them whispered, "This is treason. Treason against the Velar." Another shook his head. "No, this is salvation." The leaders were summoned. In the underground chamber, they gathered once more. The general with the scar leaned over the glowing maps, his voice like steel. This was no accident. Someone wanted us to fight. Someone wanted us to win. The question struck like a blade. Who? Some believed it was human rebels hidden in the colonies, planting the broadcast as a desperate cry for help. Others argued it must have been another alien race, one crushed by the Velar, hoping to use humanity as a weapon. A few whispered of something more dangerous, that the source was inside the Velar Empire itself. A traitor with knowledge too precise to be anything else. The mystery twisted through every mind. But one truth was undeniable: the data was real. Already engineers tested the new information. Weapons that had once bounced off Velar shields now sliced through them. Communication lines once jammed were now open. Even the movements of the Velar fleets were revealed, allowing humanity to strike where it hurt most. And so the fleet grew bolder. No longer did they only defend Earth. They reached outward, striking Velar outposts, ambushing patrols, freeing human slaves from transports. Each victory was small, but each carried a weight far greater than its size. The galaxy was watching, and the story of humanity was spreading. In hidden corners of space, whispers rose. Species long silent under Velar rule began to hope. A weak race had stood, had fought, had survived. If humans could resist, perhaps others could too. Yet hope was dangerous. For every species that whispered, another watched in fear. They knew what the Velar would do if their empire truly felt threatened. They would bring not fleets, but annihilation. Entire worlds turned to ash. Back on Earth, the broadcast remained a constant companion. Soldiers still watched it before battle, but now they knew it carried more than grief. It carried strategy. Knowledge wrapped in pain. Some wondered if this was its true purpose all along. Not to inspire, but to guide. One evening in the war room aboard the Relentless, the captain sat alone, the broadcast flickering before him. He paused on a single frame, the face of the Velar commander who had ordered the slaughter. His cold eyes stared back through the screen. The captain leaned forward, his voice a whisper meant only for himself. "Who sent this? Who gave us the weapon to kill you?" No answer came, only static. But deep inside, he knew the question mattered less than the choice before them. Whoever had sent the broadcast, whatever their reasons, humanity had taken it and made it their own. They would not waste the gift. The data revealed a target, a Velar communication hub hidden in a barren system, lightly defended but vital for relaying fleet commands. Destroying it would not end the war, but it would throw the Empire into chaos. The decision was made. Humanity would strike. The fleet launched once more, engines flaring against the void. As the ships moved into formation, the broadcast played across every screen. Faces hardened, hands tightened on controls. The voices of the dead filled the silence, and once again, humanity's fury grew sharper. When they arrived, the Velar defenders were caught unprepared. Human ships moved with precision born from the stolen data, bypassing traps, striking weak points with deadly accuracy. Explosions lit the barren sky, fragments of alien metal raining down like falling stars. The communication hub burned, its final signals crackling into silence. The victory was clean, brutal, undeniable. And yet, as the fleet withdrew, the mystery grew deeper. In the wreckage, they found something strange. A fragment of data hidden in the Velar systems, marked with the same coding patterns as the original broadcast. Another message. Another gift. The scientists tore into it with feverish hands. What they uncovered chilled the leaders to their bones. It was a map. A path not just to Velar outposts, but to the very heart of their empire. And hidden among the coordinates was a single phrase written not in alien script but in human language. "Keep going." Gasps filled the room. Some stared in awe, others in fear. Whoever sent the broadcast was still watching, still guiding. still feeding humanity the weapons it needed to rise. The general clenched his fist. I do not care who they are. If they want us to fight, then we will fight. If they want us to strike at the Velar's heart, then we will strike. But make no mistake, this is our war, our vengeance, not theirs. And so the course was set. Humanity would no longer wait for the Valar to come. They would carry the fight into the Empire itself. The broadcast had begun as horror. Then it became fire. Now it was a roadmap written in blood and secrets, and humanity was ready to follow it to the very end. The stars burned with the light of war. Human fleets no longer lingered near Earth, waiting to defend. They pushed outward now, deeper and deeper into Valar space, each battle carrying them further from home but closer to the heart of the Empire that had chained them for generations. The Relentless led the way, its scarred hull a testament to every clash it had survived. Around it sailed cruisers, carriers, and swarms of smaller ships, each forged in secret, each baptized in fire. Humanity was no longer a cornered prey. It was a predator on the hunt. The map from the hidden data guided them forward. System by system they struck. Outposts fell. Convoys burned. Valar governors fled their palaces in terror. In worlds long enslaved, humanity's arrival was greeted with awe. Some alien captives cheered them as liberators, others cowered in fear, for they had never seen the Valar bleed before. But bleed they did, and humanity showed no mercy. Every strike began the same way. The broadcast was played. The screams of the murdered colony filled the comms, and every soldier remembered why they fought. Rage carried them where courage alone might have failed. Even Valar commanders who intercepted the signal trembled, for the images showed them not just human pain, but human resolve. Still, the Valar fought hard. Their fleets were vast, their weapons devastating, their pride unshaken. Again and again they tried to crush the human advance. Again and again they were shocked by what they faced. Humans fought with a relentlessness that defied reason. They sacrificed ships to save others. Pilots hurled themselves into suicide strikes. Engineers patched broken vessels mid-battle with bare hands and stubborn will. Losses were heavy, but every human death carved another scar into the Valar. At last the fleet reached the edge of the Valar core worlds. Before them shimmered the Empire's pride, the homeward wall, a chain of colossal stations and defense fleets stretching across the stars. Beyond it lay the Valar capital, a jewel world of towering spires and endless armies. No enemy had ever reached it. No enemy had ever dared. On the bridge of the Relentless, silence reigned as the fleet stared at the impossible task. Thousands of enemy ships waited, gleaming silver against the dark. Weapons charged, shields shimmered, and for a moment even the bravest hearts faltered. The captain rose, his uniform scorched from battles past, his face lined with exhaustion, but his eyes burning bright. He opened a channel to every human ship, every fighter, every soldier waiting in fear and fury. They told us we were broken, he said, his voice steady, carried across the stars. They told us we were weak. They told us we would kneel forever. But look where we stand. Look how far we have come. Today we do not fight only for Earth. We fight for every child they murdered, every world they enslaved, every life they stole. Today we show the galaxy what it means to be human. He paused, then gave the only order that mattered. Advance, engines roared. The fleet surged forward. The Valar fired first, beams of light slicing through space. Human shields flared, ships shattered, fire consumed the void. But humanity did not stop. Missiles streaked across the battlefield, warheads tearing open Valar lines. Fighters swarmed like hornets, diving through enemy formations, striking weak points with precision born from fury. The Relentless rammed into the thickest fighting, its cannons blazing, each shot shaking the heavens. Valar dreadnoughts surrounded it, their beams carving into its armor. But still it fought, still it pressed on. The humans had no choice. This was the final war. All across the battlefield, the broadcast played. The dying colony, the screams, the faces of the doomed. It echoed through every human ship, every comm channel. Soldiers shouted never again. As they fired, pilots screamed the names of lost families as they struck. Humanity was not just fighting. It was avenging. Hours passed in a blur of fire and blood. The homeward wall cracked. Stations exploded, fleets shattered, enemy formations broke. For the first time in their history, the Valar knew true fear. Their empire, once unshakable, was collapsing before the fury of a species they had thought beneath notice. Finally, the Relentless broke through. Its cannons tore apart the last line of defense, and the Valar capital lay exposed. The jewel world that had watched centuries of conquest now trembled under the shadow of human warships. The fleet halted above the planet, weapons aimed, ready to end it all. Yet the captain did not give the order to destroy. Instead, he opened a broadcast not to humanity, not to his fleet, but to the entire galaxy. On every Valar world, on every ship, on every screen, the images appeared. The faces of the slaughtered colony, the fire, the screams, the cruelty. Then the camera shifted, and the captain of the Relentless stood tall, battle-scarred and unbroken. His voice rang like thunder. "We are humanity. You thought we would kneel forever. You thought you could break us with fear, but fear forged us. Pain made us strong, and today we rise. To the Valar, hear this. Never again will we bow. To the galaxy, hear this. We are not prey. We are not slaves. We are human and we are relentless." The message ended. The silence that followed was heavier than war. Across the galaxy, species listened, species watched, species trembled. The Valar Empire had been wounded to its core, and humanity stood tall upon the wound. On the bridge, the crew of the Relentless watched the enemy capital in silence. The war was not over. More battles would come. More blood would be spilled. But something had changed forever. Humanity was no longer chained. Humanity was no longer forgotten. Humanity had declared itself, and the stars would never forget.